Hey everyone, Cody Hayes here, and I'd like to welcome you to part 6 as we look at the second portion of Judaism. And, we left off Orthodox and Reform Judaism, kind of moving into that, but with Moses Mendelssohn, and really the last portion is with, the Torah there, how Mendelssohn argued that a lot of the practices of the Torah are no longer necessary. That, again, I've stated multiple times, that the Torah, the law, it contains 613 commandments. The 10 commandments are just but 10 of the 613. Modern day Jews cannot practice all those 613 laws because a lot of them relate to the temple system, the temple cult, and there is no longer a temple. But even among those that can still be practiced, Mendelssohn argues that a lot of them are just no longer necessary, that they relate to a time that's long in the past and has no relevance whatsoever for the modern world. So, continuing on with that, you have what's known as the shrimp incident that took place in Cincinnati, Ohio, at Union Hebrew College in 1883, and I'll explain what it is that went on here. Basically, this was the first graduating rabbinical class to happen in the New World. Whereas Europe is kind of looked upon as the Old World and the Americas are looked upon as the New World. So this is the first, graduating rabbinical class to happen in the New World. And essentially what happened is you have, conservative rabbis, liberal rabbis, conservative Jews, liberal Jews. But, after the celebrations, the graduating rabbinical class, they decide to go out and celebrate. So they go to a restaurant. And one of the things that they are served at the restaurant is an hors d'oeuvre of shrimp. Well, shrimp, shellfish, is a violation of the dietary laws of the Torah. And so, a number of the conservative Jews start to complain about being served, shellfish, shrimp, whereas the more liberal Jews are like, guys, this is the late 19th century. We're not living in the desert anymore. And the more conservative Jews essentially got up and walked out. Well, from the shrimp incident, you have 4 groups that emerge within Judaism. And what exactly, were these groups? Well, let me put them on the screen and then I'll explain more in detail. But you have, ultra-Orthodox Jews. Then you have Orthodox, your Orthodox Jew. Then you have your moderate or conservative Jew. And then lastly, you have your Reformed Jew. To kind of, mention the two, kind of starting, ultra Orthodox and then Orthodox, one thing that both of them agree with is that you need to try and follow all of the commandments of the Torah, the law, that can be followed. Obviously, a lot of them can't because they relate to the temple system. But among those that can still be followed, you need to try and follow them. A difference, though, between them is that your ultra-Orthodox Jews, they will not live around non-Jewish people. So they would often be those that many Jewish people would say are still living in the ghettos. Um, in fact, you have, ultra Orthodox Jews that live in Israel. Anyone who's Jewish, has the right to, immigrate to Israel. And even though they will live in Israel, many of them don't actually feel that the state of Israel should actually exist in, at least you could say, its modern form, because they believe that only the Messiah can establish the modern day state of Israel. But then, kind of on the other side, the Reformed Jew, that is the most liberal form of Judaism. For them, things like the ethical laws of the Torah, those should still be practiced, those should still be followed. But things like, the dietary laws, those, represent ideas that are just all in the past and aren't necessary anymore. And then your moderate or conservative Jew tries to find kind of a middle way between, the liberal and the very conservative. To kind of, add something locally with Orthodox and Reformed Judaism, the synagogue in the geographical area in Springfield, Missouri, Temple Israel, when it was first started in later part of the 19th century, it was originally both an Orthodox and a Reformed synagogue. And a big reason why for that is, within Judaism, because you're born Jewish through your mother, they don't have as much of the division, I guess you could say, that you would find within Christianity. But ultimately, Temple Israel became a Reformed synagogue when it moved to its current location, because Orthodox Jews will not drive on the Sabbath because they consider that to be working on the Sabbath and thus breaking the Sabbath. And, at its current location, it's pretty hard, to walk there. So ultimately, it ended up becoming, a Reformed synagogue. So, kind of moving more forward with modern Judaism, you have what's known as the Alfred Dreyfus Affair of the 1890s, which is what the image here on the screen shows. Dreyfus was a captain in the French army. He was Jewish, and he was the highest ranked Jewish officer of the French military. And he was accused of treason against the state. And Dreyfus was essentially declared guilty, before innocence. There was none of this presumption, innocence till proven guilt. He was pretty much proven guilty. And, you can go do a Google search for, the Dreyfus Affair and see, the images, the artwork. I remember one that had Dreyfus's face in the shape of a rat with a noose around it, and it said "the dirty beast." But eventually it's shown that Dreyfus was set up. That you had a lot of French conservatives that did not like this new government. This was essentially France as its first republic. But you had, many of the conservative French people that wanted to bring back, the monarchy, the government of Napoleon III. And so they essentially arranged for this particular Frenchman, who just happened to be Jewish, to essentially, commit treason against the nation of France in an attempt to show that this new government idea doesn't work. But one of the things that the Dreyfus Affair did do was it led to an increase in what is called Zionism. Zion refers to Mount Zion outside of Jerusalem. But where you see, kind of the arguments of this is with Theodor Herzl, who was an Austrian journalist and Jewish, and he made the statement that if we cannot find a safe haven in a country as liberal and as secular as France, then there is no place where we can find a safe haven unless we have our own homeland. So that's where you have this major push of basically, the Jewish people stating we want our own nation, we want our own homeland. So continuing forward, under Nazi Germany, the Jews were now being persecuted for being an actual race rather than being a religion. Previously, when you looked at anti-Judaism, anti-Semitism, but really more specifically here, anti-Judaism, it had to do with religious purposes in many respects. That, they, don't recognize Jesus to be the Messiah. But if one of them, did all of a sudden embrace Christianity, now that person was okay. But under the Nazis, no, that didn't matter. They were still viewed as being part of an inferior race. And the persecution by the Nazis resulted in the Holocaust, a word meaning burnt offering, and this led to the death of 6 million Jews. 12 million people died in the Holocaust. There were other groups that the Nazis went after, not just the Jewish people, but the Jewish people was often the focus. I mentioned my one colleague. She was born in Israel, and her family were in Israel before the modern-day state was set up, but they were originally from Poland. And she told me how, her family members, they saw the writing on the wall and they got out. And those that didn't get out got sent to the ovens. And the Jewish population in Poland before the Second World War was about 3.3 million. After World War II ended, it was around 300,000. So that says something right there. But the effects of the Holocaust did help create the modern-day state of Israel in 1948. The two major nations really, I'd say, involved with this were the U.S. and the U.K. And this, of course, is after the establishment of, the United Nations. But during this time period, the U.S. had essentially closed its doors to immigrants. So when, the Jewish people were trying to flee the Nazis, often at times, the Americans would turn them away, and they either had to find another safe place to go, or if they were caught, they more than likely were going to be killed. The United Kingdom, Great Britain, essentially controlled the land that became the modern-day state of Israel, and, you had Jewish people, fleeing there, and a number of the British officials, told the Muslim warlords how they would not allow the Jewish people to come in. So again, if they didn't allow them to come in, they had to go find another safe place, and if they didn't find another safe haven, if they were caught, chances are they were going to be killed. Well, that's essentially all that we have with the second portion of Judaism. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to send me an email. Till then, take care.